I'd like to introduce you to my good friend Jose Rodriguez. Jose lives with his family in Chihuahua, Mexico. And as a young man, he tried to jump the US-Mexican border a grand total of 10 times, only to be deported back to Mexico after each attempt. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the US-Mexican border, Jose's persistence in trying to reach the US might seem a bit extreme. This is a picture of that border that I took while I was living in Juarez as an LDS missionary in 2012. But if you have seen that border, Jose's drive is self-explanatory. This is the Mexican side, and this is the American side. Can you see the difference from even just a bird's eye view? It is just so obvious to them that life could get better if they could only make it just a few hundred yards north. Now, I lived with Mexican families for 2 years, and they mean more to me than I can say. Because I lived with them and knew them, I came home interested learning about what life was like for the immigrants who did make it to the US long term. And when I came back, I was greeted with some amazing news. I learned that in 2010, nearly every major political, economic, and religious leader in the state banded together to sign this document, the Utah Compact. It's an outline of 5 principles, including family protection, that represented Utahn values and morals at the time. The Utah Compact represented a statewide concern for the well-being of immigrants, and it identified Utah as a pioneer in the national immigration debate. The New York Times said that a clearer expression of good sense and sanity than Utah's would be hard to find. I was fresh off the plane from Mexico and excited about the compact, and I wanted to learn more about what life was actually like for the immigrants that lived here. So I joined a research project interviewing the leaders of social services about the services that they could provide to the immigrant population. We learned that it was difficult for many agencies to provide social services to immigrants, and we started asking them what kind of barriers they faced in meeting these needs. Whereas I have never been more proud to be a Utahn than when I heard about the Utah Compact, I've never been more ashamed than when I heard their responses. Immigrant workers receive only 52 cents for every dollar that are earned by American workers today, and they're denied access to secure housing, medical treatment, and nearly every other modern American benefit. Immigrants also lack many of the basic protections that we take for granted, including overtime pay, pensions, or health insurance. I never expected to find this kind of inequality in my own home state, but I was most devastated when our respondents told us why these problems can't be solved. Immigrant services are prohibited from providing services to immigrants due to a law called SB 81, which requires agencies to prove that their client base is legal and prohibits state funding to all unauthorized immigrants living in the state. Basically, SB 81 forces all agencies to choose to either ask all of their clients coming through their doors to provide citizenship papers and thus scare them away, or to provide conservative services that don't require any state funding at all. Most agencies take the latter road and remain unable to provide services. Now, I know that the immigrants living here are no different than the people that I met in Mexico, and ultimately no different than all of you, and that's enough for me to want to change this. But if it's not enough for you, let me tell you how your lives would be different if immigrant vulnerabilities forced them out of our state. According to the Department of Agriculture, half of the crop harvesters in the US are unauthorized immigrants. Can you imagine what would happen if all of them left? The manufacturing, agricultural, and hospitality sectors would all simultaneously be brought to their knees. Also, it's been found that immigrants have contributed between $100 to $300 billion to Social Security. So far from leeching off of social services, they may well be providing the checks that go to your grandma. We will all be very sorry if they're forced out. Now, SB 81 has led to a series of devastating and heartbreaking stories. One respondent said, "I had to let go of a qualified, wonderful teacher because her Social Security number was invalid. This single mom is forced to go out and clean people's homes now." Another said, "The reality of what's included with a broken immigration system is the separation of families." This image is the everyday result of current immigration policy. And all of this is taking place in a state that claims to believe that the way we treat immigrants will say more about us as a free society and less about our immigrant neighbors. So we have to ask ourselves, what do these realities reveal about Utah? Is this who we really are? Now, immigrants are real people with real families. They are your neighbors, and current state policy goes against the Utah Compact by prohibiting qualified professionals from helping them. I believe that it's high time that Utah live up to its supposed beliefs and end this immigration hypocrisy. I didn't even know that this problem existed until I began my research, but I now feel a responsibility to do what I can to help it and to fix it. If you help me spread the word on this, our votes and opinions can lend voices to the voiceless. Enough people making enough noise for enough time can change the world. And when it comes to helping our immigrant neighbors, it's time for all of us to get a whole lot louder.